Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra video. Today I want to talk about something a little different. Hope you guys like it. The mobalytics guys just in the last days dropped their big data dump sheets. They compiled the data from all their deck tracker users over the last 12 days from the 2nd of February to the 14th. And compiled that in two Excel sheets by deck lists, archetypes, win rate, numbers of games played, all from masters only. I will link to the Reddit post with the original Excel sheets and so on in the description down below. But what I want to do is look at some of the interesting data from this and talk about the top 5 most played, most popular decks in masters right now, and also the top 5 decks with the highest win rate, and a bit about the most popular lists and so on. So we'll dive deeper into the metagame as sort of a meta snapshot, especially now that we are close to the next patch. We will see how things change from there with their next data dump and stuff. So I might try and do this regularly, especially if they keep putting out these data sets, so we can look at how things evolve and how things actually are compared to how we perceive things from our own play experience, since that isn't always consistent with each other. Anyway, before we dive in, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content. And now let's take a look. So first we're gonna look at the most played decks in order of popularity. The most played deck, as you can see, is the Fearsome Midrange deck with Ionia. That is important. At 4,220 games in Master in that 12-day period. Noteworthy is this has been the most popular list, but it hasn't been the only list. So the way they did it is they compiled all Shadow Isles Ionia Fearsome decks in different variants with different card choices, and then gave the most popular list among all of them. But that means maybe only 10-20% of the Shadow Isles Ionia players played this, and the other 80-90% were different variations of Shadow Isles Ionia Fearsome. So keep that in mind, but I used the most popular deck list for each archetype as a whole as an example. This list specifically is a bit outdated by now, but it makes sense that the majority of people playing this archetype still play this list, because it was played to success by a popular player, and people that just net deck and copy tend to often just stick to these lists, while probably the not as popular versions of this deck in this archetype will be more evolved, adjusted lists, like people playing Will of Ionia, moving away from Shadow Assassin, stuff like that. So it makes sense that the more innovative, more adapted lists are not necessarily the most popular variant of the specific archetype, even though they might be a better version of the archetype. Alright, let's move on to the second most popular deck. The second most popular deck is Elusives Aggro in all variants. Noteworthy here is that the most popular variant actually has been championless, but no single championless variant was more popular than this Fiora version, which tilted 22 built as far as I know, and 6.0 took to rank 1 multiple times in the last couple of days on EU. So this is the overall most popular Elusive Aggro variant right now, in part due to 6.0 success, I would argue, but most Elusive variants actually, the majority of Elusive variants was championless, but different championless versions, which is why no championless version turned out to be the most popular list of the archetype. I also think it makes sense because I think this list is in a way better and more evolved and adapted than these like championless lists, which are kind of like the old initial approach to the deck, and things have evolved since then. I'm personally not 100% sure how I feel about this version, since it runs a bunch of kind of low impact or situational cards, but can't argue with the list success in the hands of 6-0. So if you're looking for an elusive list, this is certainly a very solid and proven option. And yeah, as you can see, still pretty close behind Fearsome Shadow Isles, and also kind of matches my assumption and impression that I had over the last 1 to 2 weeks on ladder, that Fearsome is more popular than Elusive, but Elusive is like close behind as like the second most popular deck that you face in Master. Alright, let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is Spiders. That is actually pretty surprising that this still seems to see this much play. Not that far behind Elusives, 2,695 games. I personally haven't seen this deck much in a long time, and it seems kind of like a relic of a couple of weeks ago and faded out, but data clearly shows otherwise, so not sure where they were hiding in my games, but yeah. And the most popular list, to no surprise, has been the latest list of pokrovac that he probably used to take rank 1 early in the month. I think there was a post on Twitter about him having taken rank 1 with this list, or a list close to this, early in February, and maybe that's where the data is coming from. And I would assume in the later half of the time period that data was collected in, not a lot of these 2,000 something games were generated, because lately this deck hasn't been seen much on ladder in my experience. We will also see, once we look at the like highest win rate decks, how that differs from like popularity, because popularity and quality are not always related, as we will see once we get there. Alright. Fourth most played deck, also kind of surprising to me, is still the old Freljord Elusives, sort of the first big elusive version that 6-0 and a couple of others used to climb to Masters. So yeah, still seems pretty popular, or at least has been until recently. Since this is past data and the period is 12 days, it's hard to say how the number of games played is distributed over the time period. This, once again, might be a case of the deck being much more popular in the early part of the time period and falling off towards the end of the 12-day period. At least that would be my guess based on my own ladder experience from day to day. But it's still a deck you see sometimes, although it seems like a strictly inferior and outdated version to the more aggressive Demacia-based Elusives, but still very popular, which also means that Elusives as a whole, if you take it past a specific region combination like Demacia Ionia and take it as an archetype with different support regions, is actually by far the most popular archetype based on that data. But I kept them as separate archetypes because they still have a different quality and are not quite the same deck, although they fit into the same larger archetype. And last but not least, as fifth most played deck is TidesofTime's Fiora Aggro Control deck that tries to set up a unit on turn 3 with 3 spell mana to protect it or put a standalone on it and then use it as an offense-defense tool to ride it to victory, either by winning with Fiora's win condition or just winning with a big elusive that holds down the opponent's offense on their turn by just being a big blocker, and hits them on your turn by being a big, hard to block attacker. So this is another deck that I think has fallen off a lot over the 12-day period, since it's not something that I see or face much anymore, which I think has to do with its win rate, which is not that high. But especially earlier in the months, it was a lot more popular, and it's a pretty cool deck, and it got multiple high-level players to master, like TidesofTime or Hyped in various variants. But it seems that the original TidesofTime variant is still the most popular among variants. All right. Curious to see how this changes in the next like 2-week period data set, especially given that there will probably be various nerfs happening in the next day or two. So gonna be interesting how things will look once we get the next data set. All right, let's move on to the top 5 decks in terms of win rate. And there are a couple of pretty interesting and surprising things here. So first of all, turns out Heimerdinger with Ionia is actually the highest win rate deck, just barely at like 61.5%. I only included decks that have more than like 500 games played. There were 1 or 2 decks that had below 500 at like 200, 300, 400 games that I didn't include, and obviously a lot of decks at like small sample sizes with very unrepresentative win rates. So I tried to stick to decks with a fairly huge and representative sample size to keep things more reliable and more significant in what they are saying. So yeah, Heimerdinger Ionia seems to be a big deal. It is very surprising that this specific variant was the most popular among variants, since I have not seen this variant. I would have expected Mogwai's or Geparder's top 10 variant to be among the most popular and most well-known. But yeah, based on data, which is hardly wrong, this is the most popular variant among all Heimerdinger Ionia lists. So yeah, if you wanna give this a try, go for it. Can only be so bad, given that it was both the highest win rate deck of all decks with a bigger sample size in the dataset, and the most popular list among them. Although there is the potential that while this was the most popular variant, that there wasn't the highest win rate variant, so that's something to keep in mind. So most popular and highest win rate only potentially correlate, but are not necessarily causally linked. Like this might as well be like the lowest win rate variant, but the most played variant. It's not that likely, because win rate still affects people's deck choice, but if the win rate with this is still positive but worse than with other variants, people might not notice and still play it. So keep that in mind and explore various variants. But as a whole, the archetype seems to be really strong and doing well across various variants. And there's something to explore and figure out what the best version is for sure here. And as I'm recording this, Josh Utterlayton just tweeted his version that he just hit rank 1 EU with, so might want to check that out on Twitter and see what is what. Maybe he found the best version. We will have to see. Alright, on to the second highest win rate. Second highest win rate is actually also the second most popular deck. So that's one of the cases where popularity and performance coincide. nicely. So yeah, the deck basically is righteously as popular as it is, because it is also almost tied for highest win rate among archetypes. The 0.4% difference to the Heimerdinger list is pretty negligible, especially given that this is at a sample size of 3,000 games, while the other one is at a sample size of around a bit over 800 games. So there is a higher variance potential in and around the actual win rate, while here it's much smaller. So the once you clean up the win rate for statistical variance, this would actually be coming out to a higher true win rate than the Heimerdinger deck, probably because the deviation potential is just much higher with 800 games compared to 3,000 games. But yeah, most popular and one of the best decks for a reason. And in third place, we have the most popular deck, which is still not that far off from Elusives, and also kind of confirms my experience and impression that while Elusives isn't quite as popular as Fearsome, that Elusives is a bit better, a bit stronger of a deck right now. But that is only so relevant given that the difference is only a bit more than 1% in win rate over both huge sample sizes. So they're pretty neck and neck, and are basically the two big dogs in the format. But it seems like Heimerdinger with Ionia is coming for his share of the metagame in the future, especially with expected nerfs to Elusives and Fearsome Shadow Isles. So yeah, once again, popularity and win rate are pretty close here, and I think affect each other. Like, this is one of the decks that is as popular and remained as popular as it is because it does well, while decks that are popular but aren't as performing as well will often kind of drop off and fade out of their popularity after a while when people realize that the deck isn't all that it's cracked up to be and is underperforming. But yeah, if a deck is popular and strong and performs, it will keep or even increase its popularity, I think, if that makes sense. Next, we have something pretty interesting and a bit unexpected. It's the championless Freljord Shadow Isles control. Something that I rarely ever face, but secretly and quietly has been doing pretty well. I think the sample size is even above 1k games. I think it's like 1.2k games or something, close to 1.3k. So it's not even that unpopular. It just didn't quite make it into the top 5. I think it was 6th or 7th place of popularity or something. But yeah, about 1% in win rate behind Shadow Isles, which is pretty damn good, honestly, and pretty interesting. So if you're looking for something a little different that seems to be doing well right now, here's a great option for a fresh change of pace. And yeah, the list looks pretty sweet. This has been the most popular list and seems like a pretty good starting place for the archetype, if you ask me. And last but not least, we have Swim's Dawn Spiders 2.0 list with a couple of adjustments, which is still making the cut at the more popular highest win rate decks in 5th place with 58.4%, so not that far behind the Championless control deck we just looked at. Basically Swim's initial Dawn Spiders list with a couple of small tweaks and adjustments, which seems to be still capable of holding its own and doing decent. The sample size here was close to 1,000 games. I think it was like 990 games or something. So still a fairly robust sample size or data set. So yeah, there you have it. Couple of interesting surprises once we looked at the win rate, I think, and a couple of like faded out popular decks in the popularity top 5 that probably have fallen off drastically in popularity over the entire time period the data set was collected. And here a couple of like sleepers in terms of performance that probably weren't on a lot of people's radar, certainly not on mine. I didn't expect Heimerdinger to do that well. I thought the deck had potential and was strong, but I didn't expect it to even potentially outperform Elusives in win rate. I did not expect to see championless Freljord as eye control in the top 5 of the top 5 win rate, and probably didn't expect Dawn Spiders to still do that well either. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. What surprised you? What did you expect? How do you feel about the data? How does the data compare to your experience and impression? And what do you think the data means? And also, of course, how do you like this type of video and the format that I did it in? Give me some feedback so I can see if it makes sense to make more of these videos in the future, and also if there's something you would like me to adjust or improve on how I am doing it. So yeah, that's it again for this time. As usual, you can find all the important information in the description down below. And of course, if you want to support me, subscribe down below, like, share, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications, and of course, if you want to help us content creators on YouTube, turn off your adblock or whitelist YouTube on your adblock. That's it again for this time. I'm your host ManuS. I thank you for watching, and I see you next time.